Test. Just testing if the microphone works. I'm gonna start very shortly. Yeah, I'm not used to do those those streams like that, but I think, well, since last time I did one, well, I think you enjoyed it, and yeah, I'd like to make more of these. So just setting up the music. Well, my day have been going pretty well. I got to talk a lot with our team at school I've been talking about production because we've been working on a project at school for big movie. I think something, okay, it's 8 minutes, but it's still big since we're only 30 on this. And I was showing what I was developing with by myself, and they were not really expecting it to. Oh yeah, actually, I think I could talk a bit about what happened with the first two streams. Yeah, it was about 8 months ago, and it basically the first two streams went pretty well. I had some computer issues, but computer issues are not that big of a deal. I mean, I don't really have to. I don't really have to worry that much. I can always try to fix my computer, which I did. But I found out. Well, my mom contacted me. She had some bad news from the hospital that she wanted to talk with, um, and yeah, I went back to my hometown to talk to her to try to figure out what was going on, and because she had some test results back, and I don't want to go too much into her details because it's yeah, it's part of her, yeah, it's part of her life and all. But yeah, it was hard. I wanted to go to give my support, and I had to cancel my stream. So the first week was canceled, so I could go meet my mom. Then the second one, I just didn't really have the energy to do that again. And I think the third one was BronyCon, so I had 3 weeks where I had no streams at all, and it felt weird. And I was thinking, okay, maybe I should stop streaming for a while, and yeah. But now my mother is going much better, and yeah, and just trying to finish school so I can get a job, but trying to work on my. And yeah, Luna's determination has been going. It's been going much better for the past months, but the first script was so hard to work on because there was just too much going on in Moonbow, so I had to go back on the script to rewrite it on something that would be much easier to follow. And it was hard. I had to sacrifice a lot of stuff that meant a lot to me to make it good for everybody. And yeah. Oh, and for the title, a lot of people wondered why this was no longer called Moonbow. It's kind of weird, but I kind of blame the Undertale fandom for that. When Luna's determination was in work, I was just thinking of the name. I was thinking what name could be given, and yeah, originally one of the ideas was to go with the name of the song, and so I was thinking, well, it's about Luna's determination, so it fits the name of the song. It fits also the story. So, but I realized that the Undertale fandom kinda took the word determination, so for a while I was forced to go with another name because I didn't want people to jump on me saying that, thinking that it was an Undertale fan project, while it was not really meant to. I don't really have anything against the Undertale fandom, but I didn't want them be confused and to think I was stealing something that was meant for them. So for a while I went with Moonbow, which was Moonbow was pretty much just the name of the natural phenomenon. Because when you get a rainbow at night, discussed by the moon just going at the right angle, it just makes something beautiful. And I was thinking of a rainbow at night and just thought of Luna's banishment, which was that. So I was thinking that something that was that beautiful was also something bringing back some terrible memories for Luna. So I was thinking of that. It was just a simple word. It was simple to remember. It was not too complex. Because I was thinking of all the other names I had and they were not very memorable, so... But at one point I just realized, I went back and I looked and I just thought, no, I cannot just take away what... I cannot take away what Melodic Pony did like that just because of the Undertale fandom, so I thought, well, if people come thinking that it's gonna be an Undertale thing, well... is it my computer? I hear the fan, but that's all. I think it might be yours. Because oh wait, I think I forgot to disable the notifications. Fine, there we go. So yeah, I've been talking for about 10 minutes, so I guess I could start a bit. Gonna start the music. Just getting some mood. Winamp. I hope the playlist still works like it did. I hope. In memory of Melodic Pony in the beginning. Oh, actually I was thinking of keeping it for the end because well, I could do that at the very beginning, but I think that keeping it at the end with Luna saying her line with thank you so much for everything, I think it just fits a bit better for that. And having his name before the title would I don't know, I feel it would work a bit better at the end, but I could could consider doing it at the very beginning, since it would be it's not something too hard to actually change at the end, since it's just some text. But to do it right, well, I need to just make it feel honest and not just feel like I'm just doing it because it had to be done. But yeah, I hope I didn't mess up the audio level last. It's a procedurally generated loss and made from the procedural generation. I'm going to be using it for sorry. I just sorry, I just didn't realize that my music was that and yeah, the map is pretty good. It's not that accurate, but and yeah, I'm doing some 3D animation. Subdivide. Divide. Alright, it's like this. So I'm gonna just close down this comment. Alright, so gonna put a gonna go put a sphere where Candlelight is gonna be at. So just gonna disable skylight, distant light, flat. So, oops. Oh yeah, the local space. I haven't used that software in a while, so should be. Not gimbal mode, view, align, world. Alright. So yeah, right now I'm just gonna model the base geometry to get the idea before I go with the subdivide like this. After that I'm gonna be able to alright. I think I could go and meh. Yep, gonna need to put a new grid. Oh my bad, I just realized I don't have the music display. Oops. Okay, never mind, I'm gonna fix the music display properties. There's up. Yeah, I just realized that the music is not even visible. Actually, can you hear the music? There we go. If I remember right, material palette. Display surface. Save image as. Step. Document. New. Castle. Okay, good. Yeah. Basically, I have a bank of images I'm actually using as inspiration and just as references. So when I really need to go back and look at the okay, so hip no. Alright. Oh. And yeah, I know it's 3D. It goes 3 up. 2 years old now. Smooth. Texture. Alright, should have textures. GL. Okay, open GL. Out OBJ, alright, grid, surface model. Okay, is this the first time I have a problem plugging a texture like that? Usually it works. Except... grid. This texture one. Yep. Well, alright. So. Oh, I'm stupid. Okay, so here's the thing with Houdini when you go and you make some and you just make some 3D. Okay, UV project that and all right, so. rectangle. Initialize them. So slate 0, 0, 0, 90, like this. And scale, scale. Alright. BJ. So I get my map backwards. Flat shaded. Smooth. Yo. Alright. Finally getting a texture on my so like this and object. All right. So oh, wait, was I exhausted? Okay, I thought he was still on his thought he was still on his stream. But yeah, quite understand why it'd be. And yeah, 3D map. Basically, I had a picture of the let me find it. My push. Was alright, so basically I was going to do this in was gonna do this in Blender in Houdini. It's basically a set of mountains with the structure, the depth, and the map. So every time I get a shot like this, with canterlot like this, I get the actual mountains and all, because I want it to fit more with the aesthetics of the project. And the problem is that the aesthetics of MLP doesn't fit that much. Well, it fits, but it's not what I need, it's something else. I go back like this, and alright, so at the end I'm gonna use a subdivide like this, just to get the actual shape. Right now, just using those, this. And no, I'm definitely not gonna put that texture on top. I'm gonna go with the new texture. Basically, I want it to feel like the mountains when you look at the real background or painting. Oh, and if people wonder why the hell I'm using this instead of Maya, the answer is that it's procedural, so I can actually change stuff at the end if I realize that I made a mistake or I... Yes. Oh, this is a top-down of basically the map that they use, well, the promotional map that they use for many MLP teams testing, basically, using, because it's the actual shape of the, how it should look like. So I'm basically and yeah, no, I'm not. I'm definitely gonna do a 3D render up with it. My goal is not really to make a 3D render. Well, to make a 3D render and not do anything else. I might paint over to give more painting aesthetics, because 3D stuff is cool, but it kind of look a bit lame when you look at it for a while, because the shading is just, it's gonna be mathematically perfect because of the way it's handled, just a Monte Carlo brute force. Oh yeah, I think at one point I should talk a bit about what the hell is a Monte Carlo face render, but basically the way that those renderers work is just that they send a ton of rays. Well, I say rays, I mean digital rays, just a lot of maths, and they do a lot of probabilistic maths. Now the rays are gonna go in a direction and all. So if you have, for example, a very but yeah, if you go with a render that's gonna take a long time, For example, if you go with well, if you have a huge studio and you just want because the thing is, when you start to render, I think I could show you quickly how it goes. You go with subdivide this, you go with grid, I'm just gonna disable this, and you go with render view, render. As you see, it's really gonna go with some very low resolution things and start to take the shape like that. And the more and yeah, the more time you get to continue to do more computations, the more the cleaner it looks. And obviously it's just a ton of big just big polygons. But the thing with that is that the better you want your picture, well, the less green, the sharper you want it to look like, the more you get to do probabilistic calculations with random numbers. So you go with just one ray of light going that direction, just hitting right here, and now just estimating all the possibilities of ways it's gonna end. So if it just bounces that direction like that, or if it goes in that direction, depending of the angles and all. And there's other factors. If it's transparent, it could go right through, it could deviate, since it's there's some well, it's all depending on the physics and all. So you go with the Monte Carlo based renderer, and you just brute force your way to get the cleanest look, instead of just, because it's a lot of computations and a lot of maths involved, and I'm not an expert on that. But if you're gonna do that, well, if you're gonna just, well, if you go with integrals, and you cannot just assume based on the well, if you cannot take the math equations and just give one answer, you just brute force with a lot of I'm losing my words right now, but my math teacher talked about it when you, because for example, in our math problems, we were asked to find the volume of well, basically find the volume of a thing using a triple integral. So you had one for one axis and the other two for the other two axes, and you had to find a way to do that integral. And if you had variables, well, if you had some really weird math involved in the shapes of the sometimes you couldn't do that, so you had to go and instead of doing the actual integral, you had to just cut the thing in many small pieces and just assume that the so think of it like taking a giant piece and cutting it into pieces to find the volume of it, instead of just measuring to get the result. Kind of like this when you do 3D renders. You cannot really find the mathematical equation that would give you that picture, so you just cut it into a ton of pieces and you just brute force with just plain logic instead. Which is not a bad thing, but it's it needs a lot of time, since it's probabilistic, and you need to get an actual because the thing when I start the render, it's gonna get a lot of grain, a lot of low resolution stuff, because, well, basically that's how the render starts, and my computer cannot do more computations than what it's equipped to be to do, and it's a good computer. because basically the more computations you do with your computer, the more it heats. Oh, it's a GTX 1050. It's very strong. It's around the strength of the PS4. But the thing is that Houdini doesn't support graphics card acceleration, so I need to use my CPU, which is about 18 times less powerful if you just count G-flops. And G-flops are pretty much the unit that you... well, one of the units is basically it's basically floating point computations. Oh, my CPU is an Intel Core i7 4790 at 3.6 gigahertz, and yeah, it's a computer I got last year. I was actually working on. Well, I actually worked on a few animation projects for other people because I needed the money to actually afford a computer to actually do my projects. Because back then, my previous computer, you might not remember, maybe you do, but I do because I lived it. But basically the computer that I was using was so slow because it was just a laptop. PD! I know, I'm using 3D. What? I'm not using Flash. For once. Oh. Actually, I was talking about the computer I have, because you might remember back when I was on my stupid laptop and it couldn't render stuff very well. When I was working on Good Morning Baltimore, the computer was so damn slow that I think you used the 3ds Max, PD. No, not Houdini. He was using a no 3D animation software. Uh, yep, indeed. It's actually why I'm using it right now, because it's really, really good at it. I think about it, yes, I could. And yeah, it's really, really, really good when you better than Blender. It depends what you're gonna do with it, because some stuff is better at it, some is not. And yeah, back in the days I was using Blender for all my stuff because... and yeah, well, because yeah, I didn't really know more more 3D animation software, and I just thought, well, I don't know a lot, so I'm gonna at least know the Oh yeah, I can talk a bit about that scene. Basically, when we were working on it, PD was talking about making a huge scene at the very end to just encompass the, well, just to get the idea of what the uh, well, what the animation was with all the jokes that we did. Just he said it was our last chance to make people laugh, and he was right because, well, kind of, we had the credits that we did later that which we got to make a few jokes we really liked, but basically we had that moment to just put the all the backgrounds, and yeah, he used he used 3ds Max, a very old version of it, but it still worked, so I'm not really complaining. But but yeah, basically it was we were talking a bit about how we could proceed to do that scene, and I was talking about what I had as an experience and what I knew that would work and what couldn't. And there was one other scene that I was working on earlier. It was the scene where we had the 3 mascots, which were they were pretty much just walking to the other scene, and what I did was just a few yeah, it was just a perspective trick with a few objects scaling with a different speed, and people thought it was 3D, so thinking, yes, I did my job right, and I was really glad of that scene. But we realized that but yeah, we realized that a lot of things that we had to do to make it work right, like we couldn't really put the attention on the hooves, the feet of the characters, so we had to go with the oh, and COPD, and yeah, the we couldn't put the attention because they realized the connection between the characters and the background, and that was one of the drawbacks that we had with that scene. With so we had to go on the ground level just to have the hooves just going flush without having to worry about any perspective, because we realized that it would work much better. And I sent the entire team to go just do background characters just to do that scene, because at that point we didn't really have anything left, so I started making some kind of guidelines, just one template, put your character there, do this, and everything's gonna be fine. So they all listened, they all worked right, they did their job, they were really good. And yeah, we got more than 100 characters for the scene until PD told us that his computer couldn't handle more than that at the time. So it was really sad, because it felt like we had a lot of stuff we did for nothing. But we took all the stuff that worked well, that we were proud, and we just used it. And it did a very good result at the end. And subdivide. All right. Not just once, but oh, it's called Houdini. I actually have the really I could give the description. Basically, it's the one of the animation software. Well, I say animation. It's not really good at animation, but when you want to model stuff in 3D, it's really, really good. It's basically it's for procedurally generated stuff. So you have the nodes, you just plug in what you want to, well, what you want to use with it, and you get the oh, there we go. And yeah, it's really good at its job for that. It's not good at animating characters because they haven't, well, they're working on it as they said last time, but the software itself is not meant for, yeah, it's not meant for making character animation yet. So yeah, right now I'm just making the just getting the depth of the wait. Oh, actually, I had some tests. The idea is that most of the backgrounds that involve this are not actually, well, the way they were made. I'm actually just gonna go with. I'm gonna go with some matte paintings, so they're gonna be very, very far, and the animation of the characters that is gonna be close. It's gonna, well, it's gonna be still done in 3D, but it's gonna be handled like you'd handle you would handle get a minute. It's gonna be done like you would handle 2D animation. So some slight perspective effects, but that's all. So I'm gonna go with this. Uh, well, not exactly. I'm a Quebecer. I speak French, like, well, school and all, but yeah, I'm just boring old Canadian. Just like Sponies. And yeah, I speak English only as my second language, and some people actually picked on me for that in the fandom. And it kind of pissed me off, mostly because they pretty much just ignored my criticism upon them, and they just said, well, you're French, you're lazy, you're a coward, you're and all this stuff. And someone pretty much just went at one point an argument, and you said, well, you're just a smelly French. And I wanted to punch him in the face, like real hard. And I think I should have done that when I think about it. No, seriously, I've been in an argument today with someone who really hates me to the point where he's just gonna keep going and going and going, making videos against me, where he's just gonna try to hurt my reputation by spreading lies about me. And I'm not an expert in that, but lying about people because you don't like them is not the way to go. And yeah, he called me talentless. He called me talentless. He claimed I was mad at a guy online for being in the Watch Mojo top 10. Oh, and see you, Hyperdash. Yeah. And yeah, I've heard some very nasty stuff from some people, and I hate it when they claim to be bronies and to be proud of the fandom or just to use the fandom for their goals, because I feel they don't deserve to be here. They don't deserve to do that. And yeah, they're literally being assholes with me just regarding on that. And yeah, someone just went against me, claiming I had no talent at all, and he never actually gave an explanation. He was just mad at me for making an animation that was not good for his standards. And I hate to say that, but what are you expecting from a student? And even back at the time, I was not even a student, so it was just, well, I was a student, but in 3D animation. Well, not in 3D animation. I was just trying myself in engineering, just trying to be someone. And at one point, I just realized, well, I'm not meant to that. I'm meant for something else. I meant for changing the world, not through making stuff like, making engineering stuff, but through other means to teach them lessons, to inspire them. Because I realized at one point that medias were so important to me, how they shaped my life, that the way I could give back was to try to shape their lives in a positive manner. Because I realized that some cartoons were so bad in morality. You know those cartoons where you get that character who always wins even though he's a bad guy, and he's really just gonna try to ruin the time of everybody else? Like some YouTubers. I just realized, no, I think I should do cartoons where the good guys win. The cartoons where what matters is really what people do, not just what people think that they are, not being just personalities, just, you know, those characters who just, I cannot really think of any. The software is free for non-commercial license. The only thing is that some of the stuff is limited. Like, you cannot use it. Well, you can use it, but there's some stuff like for the renderings, you're limited to 720p, and you get a watermark. But if you want to learn with it, you're gonna have a lot of fun. Oh, and if people wonder what it's looking like so far, Kinda. Well, I liked making fan animations, but I realized that it was not that good, so I was thinking, well, I know a bit the basis, but I cannot go far if I cannot go far in life as I just go and just do those animations on YouTube. So I thought that I could just try just find myself a goal and to because I realized that I could do more than just YouTube, because YouTube is good, but and so I started learning a bit the well, wait, I should, yeah, I'm gonna go with castle. Because animation is a great tool to learn, but some of the stuff I was trying to learn, I couldn't really learn it at school. Well, I couldn't. What the hell am I saying? I could learn it at school, but not through YouTube. And there's a lot of stuff I couldn't learn at school, and I learned through making fan animations. Like I have learned a lot of stuff about script writing thanks to YouTube. And yeah, I sound like I'm going to cry, and it's really not helping me at all. Oh dear. Because I am doing this for a reason, and there's some people around, well, there's some people online who don't care why you're doing that. They're just gonna care of the how. And the problem is that they're gonna just try, well, they're just gonna try to crush your dreams because that's the only thing that they can do. Because apparently yeah, because apparently some people just really like to crush dreams, and I need to find a defense for that. And the problem is that just I need to influence people to not give up just because people just because people think that it's not worth taking the risk and not worth and oh my god, how I'm doing in Japanese. I'm really I know about nothing in Japanese, so oh, and okay, one of the things I really forgetting uh is alright, gonna continue that part. And oops, edit. Rock Mountain. Oh, it's us going tonight. Well, except the the argument that I had today, it went pretty well. I went to school to prove a bit my point with my classmates. They were pretty happy with what I found. My teacher was really happy with what I found as well, because he was talking about well, he was, and yep, a 3D map of Equestria. It's not gonna be the most detailed map ever, because it's basically just to so no, actually the camera itself is not gonna be that moving. Actually, the I tried to get some restraints with the way I'm gonna animate the camera in Luna's determination, but I'm still gonna need some very complex scenery for some of the shots. So I'm just using it so I can have a very clear reference of the way the mountains are gonna be placed. And yeah, this is gonna look very interesting, because I'm gonna go with a lot of snow with the well, gonna go with a lot of snow for the um this. Yeah, right now just moving some points. It's not that complex, and at the end it's gonna look like okay, it's not gonna be the most complex map ever, because in future animations probably. I think it might be useful when I'm gonna do the my next project, which is gonna be a project about Sunset Shimmer. Basically, I want, well, and yeah, I've been planning, well, been writing on the side story about Sunset Shimmer. Just, and obviously the script is very it's hard to handle, because there's not a lot going on, but the little that is going on matters a lot. It's really about the little details. It's about the because the thing is that Sunset Shimmer, she left Equestria because of the because of her anger against Celestia. But the thing is that Celestia had her reasons to refuse what she refused, because basically this story, and because I'm kind of following the comic of the fall of Sunset Shimmer, where they pretty much just say that she was very interested in the mirror in the very beginning, and Celestia didn't want her to well, she didn't want her to know more about the mirror, and she had her reasons, but she was scared. And the way it goes is that you have Sunset Shimmer is starting to well, kinda. I think the comic is either canon or kinda canon, with some of the ideas that still work, because as far as I've seen, there's nothing contradictory with the statements that have been done, because basically basically what we know about Sunset Shimmer from Princess Celestia is that she got very interested in magic, and she got very greedy, and she wanted more power. And yeah, I kind of want to represent it, but in a way where you kind of understand where she got that want, where she got to be that. You remember? Oh, I don't know actually. Someone sent me the comic to read online. Yeah, I should feel bad about it, but Skylight. Okay. All right. Scene view. Oh. Oh, the purpose of this Sunset Shimmer story. Basically, I want to represent in the story the how can I put it nicely? Basically, I want to represent Princess Celestia's regrets, because the thing is that she just wanted Sunset Shimmer not to touch the mirror, because she thought she was not experienced enough in magic to touch it, which I quite understand, because that's still well, because she might be experienced in magic, but she didn't think she was mature enough to do the right decisions, and she thought that since it was something that important, she might know how to use it, but maybe not for the right reasons. And Celestia just wanted Sunset to actually learn a bit about magic beforehand, because she thought that if she didn't know more about the magic of friendship, she wouldn't have reasons to do that would be for her. So I want to explore the idea that that Princess Celestia wanted Sunset not to touch that mirror, so she could learn friendship first. But Sunset thought that Celestia was just didn't believe in her skills. So a lot of misunderstandings. You know, a story where there's not really a bad guy, just one who had to be the one to do the bad decision. And yeah, I understand that. Yes, Sunset Shimmer is not the she's not perfect. She made mistakes and she kept making mistakes and dumb decisions. But I don't want to show her as the bad guy, just as one of those bland bad guys who don't who just want power, but just to get that feel of wanting to be more. By 2. Oh god, I hate when that is. This. Yeah, kinda. It's good. It's gonna be done on Princess Alessia's point of view. I don't want it to feel cinematic, as in, you know, those big blockbuster movies with a lot of loud music. It's gonna be very, very slow, silent, some dialogue, but not just focusing on the moment. You know, that moment before someone just snaps and does the wrong decision. Because I feel those moments mean a lot, and I feel just those last minutes before she does the wrong decision matter a lot more than the rest. So I basically want to get something something with a lot of drama but not a lot of action. Maybe to have Sunset Shimmer knocking out some guards, but not really much more. Right. Yeah, the idea of the way it's supposed to be set. The story starts in the beginning of the first Equestria Girls. You know that scene where Celestia tells everybody to go to sleep because she's gonna talk a bit about the subject later. Yeah, it's basically gonna start at that scene and you start at that scene, you get the flashback, and after that flashback you get the well, after that flashback you get that scene where the movie really starts after Twilight moved to the no, she just jumps to the human world. And yeah, after that, there's not many plans in my mind. I had some ideas for a remake of the first Project Undercloud with better skills, because I finally know a bit better how not to do stuff. Because I know I am not perfect. I made some mistakes in my past, and I just want to improve my skills. Thinking maybe if I go with a remake of something I've done before, it matter a lot. Maybe I'm gonna finally show that I'm finally getting better. So, I'm not doing. Yeah, it's we're on a Tuesday, so there's not a lot, except the fact that we're in the end of the month, which means I'm gonna have not to forget about paying my rent. Yeah, I kind of made a mistake last month. I paid, well, the last month, the one before, I paid my rent, but on the 15th of the month, because I couldn't get, just to find it one time where I was there and the landlord was still there. Well, of course, things figured themselves out, and they don't hate me for anything, because they said, well, you get to pay, and that's the only time where it really happened. Oh, oh yeah, wet. Yeah, what I did as a mistake. Uh, it says in the bottom here, cooking up, which is basically it's just calculating all the stuff of the subdivide that I took here, which means a lot. And yeah, it's not responding. Never mind. This, just gonna go with this mountain and XY. Okay, I'm gonna have some. Okay, so frequency. Alright, like this. Oh, my thoughts on Trixie. I like her as a character, but a lot more after the finale with I'm really starting to forget. And then to where and back again, where you get to see you get to see Trixie's character finally redeeming herself, trying to save the day instead of causing trouble. I feel Trixie is, well, I wouldn't say underrated because she has a lot of fans. I feel Trixie is kind of a character with a lot of opportunities that we could explore a lot, because unlike Twilight, she's not doing real magic, she's just using show magic, and she has to prove herself much more than Twilight, because her entire life is dedicated to well, it's basically dedicated to proving herself in front of a stage. So an episode with Twilight where she get a bit like Second Princess, kind of. Maybe not with Twilight, maybe with Starlight, because the two characters have to prove their skills. Because Trixie is able to fake it because that's basically her job. But that's still a lot of skills that you have to prove what you can do. And yeah, the two characters are pretty good as far as as far as I've seen in the show. But hey, Yuki, also known as Juju, come on, we can share Trixie. Yes. Oh, this is Houdini, procedural software. It's mostly modeling. Let's, so do. So picking. All right. Oh, wait. Oh, I see. This. This. Okay, so I think I had some technical difficulties. I am terribly sorry about this. I know I should try to find a way to fix it. But the computer itself is pretty good. I mean, it's my computer, so browser up. There we go. No, up. Yeah, I know. The problem with my ISP is just that I I'm stuck with that ISP because there's no other ISP that actually just work here, because they clearly told me you cannot have anything else than Bell. I'm stuck just because of the infrastructure of the building. Material palette. All right. Surface. Select. City. Roughness. Rope. Use. Use. All right. So. In stripe. Nope. Never heard of. City. Oh. Stupid. I create a material, but I forget to assign it to my... There we go. And yeah, either the building owner should invest in better infrastructure, or I should invest in a better building. And from the look at thing, I think I should invest in a better building. And yeah, just a bit of roughness. My YouTube money? Are you kidding me? I don't I don't make enough YouTube money to finance that. I mean, I kind of make like 20 bucks a month with YouTube. And there's my Patreon, which yeah, well, I guess I could talk about my Patreon because it exists. But yeah, so okay, grid. I'm not gonna go with something too complex with the subdivide and the, because that's definitely just for the background, but I need this to get the... And after I do this subdivide, I'm gonna go with the mountain, just get the... And my video output is low. Oh, I think I know what I did. I'm doing a subdivide, but I haven't made a cage version of the. So it needs to do all of this. Okay, wait. What is the? Oh, bypass. Oh, there's none. Oh, how I came out with that design. It's a long story actually. I actually wanted to no see, and obviously, what at that time it was just obvious that I should go and make my OC, because at that time, well, it was in 2013. I was planning for my first animation panel at BronyCon, and just realized, well, everybody has an OC, and I should make one. So I went and I made my own, and I had no idea how to start. I was just thinking, okay, here's what is the range of what the background characters have. So I think I should go and just make something around it. And I was thinking of the hair color, and just looking at OCs, and I was thinking maybe Vinyl Scratch. Vinyl Scratch has blue hair, so I cannot use blue hair. I didn't want to use red because it didn't fit me. Brown was too brown. It was just a boring color, and I didn't want to go and copy other colors already there. So I just questioned myself what would be the best idea for that situation, and I wondered for a while. And I just went with green because of my well, I just went with green because back in the days I was working with Yoshis, and it was really popular. Well, when I was in no, when I was Newgrounds, and yeah, I was on Newgrounds before. I had a very very weird reputation back then. People like my stuff, but I think the reason why they like my stuff is just because I was not trying to do a Super Mario Bros. Z ripoff back in the days. And, oh god. And back in the days was really, really something worth celebrating. Because basically someone did a series where you had Mario, Sonic, Shadow, and Luigi, and Yoshi. And they were pretty much just fighting against Bowser and Eggman. And basically there was just a lot of action, a lot of adventure. People liked it. It was fun to watch. And people tried, since it was popular, to do their own. And by do their own, I mean do the same thing but with other stuff. So there was someone who did that with Mega Man. There was someone who did that with Kirby. There was someone who did that but with Tails. And at one point it was just oversaturated with people doing the same thing. And there's nothing wrong with doing the same thing as everybody else, but it gets boring after a while. And at that point, I just turned and saying, I was saying, well, I got a thing about Yoshis, and yeah, just a bunch of Yoshis, and they're fighting against evil Koopa. And back then, I was just doing that because sprite animation was not too hard for me to do. It was not turning me insane compared to pony animation, where you have to do the character rigs, you have to do the backgrounds yourself. And yeah, okay, it was back in the days where you had about 10 megabytes to do everything, so sprite movies were very, uh, very popular because you didn't have to worry about those technical details. And that's where I got to get a bit known. And I really like Yoshi's. My profile pic was a Yoshi, a green Yoshi. So it was just the color that fit me. So I was thinking maybe I could go with a green mane with a white coat, since they both fit like a Yoshi. And I tried it on a pony. It just looked good. And people actually wondered at one point, well, what's the name of your OC? And at that point, I didn't know what to give as her name. So I just called her Root. And something quite interesting happened. Someone just gave her a name. Just calling her a Minty Unicorn. And I found it fun. It was a nice name. It was cute. It was so I thought, well, why not? Why not call her Minty? And at one point, I just got tired of being known as player.exe. So I decided to just change my name to Minty Root as well, because it was unique, it was nice, it was not a lot of alright. Oh, nice. And let's see here, render. And yeah, a lot of people, well, actually, I got into a fight with some people over that subject, but a lot of people don't understand some rules of making OCs. Actually, just the alicorn OC thing is a very controversial thing. Even in these days, you get people who make alicorn OCs and they're wondering why people are mad against them. And the answer is quite simple, because you just don't play with the rules, you just make something. And there's nothing really wrong with having an alicorn OC, but you just make your OC turn into a character that is overpowered by default. Oh, and yeah, my guy. I'm sorry about that. My OC was originally supposed to be a guy until someone just looked at it and said it was a mare. And at that point, it was just too late for me. I couldn't just go back in my original life. Oh, okay, so but yeah, I had some kind of identity crisis because of my OC. I was thinking my icon on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. They currently working on some CG scenery for the that project. With Luna's determination. I basically want some good scenery to fit with the F4. All right. Oh, nice. Oh, and one thing that I found out, because I'm still learning that software, but there's a brush tool, and okay, an lasso tool, and yeah. Oh, and this map is basically gonna be a 3D map that I'm gonna use for the basically for the backgrounds. Yeah, you can call me Minty. Don't worry about this. I'm not. Well, as long as you don't go and call me names, I'm perfectly fine with whatever name that doesn't sound weird. Alright, so. Yeah. Oh, and if my... Oh, what did I think of Tron? I'm really feeling like a bad person, but I still haven't seen Tron. I know. I wanted to see it for a long time. Rudy. Oh my god, Rudy. Okay, so let's... Oh, I think about it. I haven't played much music. Actually, since Hinkling Bear is there, I think I could play back the... Who's my favorite MLP? Oh, good question. My favorite character, maybe Twilight, because Twilight is, well, she's the main character, but she's also, she presents a lot of stuff I actually like the idea of a shy, nerdy character who gets to save the world. I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm a nerd. Or all the things that she learned over the years because of thanks to her friends. And yeah, I actually said that to Crown Prince, and actually I went and asked her why she was known as Crown Prince, and she said a story about her childhood. Where I think she said that she was told a lot. Sorry. But yeah, she was told that she was told that she'd be a princess and all, and she turns and she says, "I'm not a princess, I'm a prince." And apparently that's how the name comes from. Pony Girl Buddy. Yeah, this is a really weird story. Yeah, basically I created my OC using pony bases, and I just thought, well, I'm not very manly, so it fit a bit for my OC to be to have a more feminine body. So I thought, well, there's nothing really wrong with that. So so I went with that, and the problem that I kind of didn't think about at first is that I might have a very well, I gave my OC a feminine body, but I forgot the eyelashes. And the thing with that is that a lot of people just assumed that it was a mare. So I had to say to everybody there that it was just a very girly stallion. But people didn't believe me that much, so... Well, they did, but I had to explain at one point. I just got tired. And I thought, well, there's nothing really wrong with having a Merosi. Because actually some people turned, and the example, it's kind of ironic. Because it was back in the days, but people just turned and they told me, well, there's Forest Rain who has a Merosi. I was thinking, well, Okay, then maybe it's not that wrong. And if I get a girlfriend, no. I'm kind of shy with that. I don't know, just... Well, not only I'm shy, but apparently I'm really bad at signals. No, I'm not thinking. I'm not talking about stuff like blinkers before making a turn. I mean, just not noticing signals when people are interested in me. A Royal Lucy. I thought about it, but I pretty much gave up because I thought it would be. Yeah, I thought it would be a bit edgy, and you know those Royal Lucies we see a lot. I didn't want to make my OC a princess because I felt it was. Yeah. It's a crime to make Princess OC apparently. And yeah, I kind of made part of my OC storyline that she wanted to be one princess because she had basically she wanted to be a princess not for the title, well, kind of. She wanted to make her parents proud, but she also wanted the wings that alicorns have because she said that she said that alicorns, since they have wings, if she had wings, she'd get to fly with her sister because she said that it was kind of sad that she couldn't have that opportunity. Oh no, there's a flood! Okay, no. Okay, so I'm gonna need to go back. Yes. Other TV shows I like to watch. Good question. Most of the stuff I watch currently is live action stuff because well, mostly the news currently because I'm not. Yeah, these times I'm not too interested in taking my time to watch another cartoon. Not really because I don't like other cartoons, just that I feel if I go and I invest my time into discovering another cartoon, I don't want just to get left out of the MLP fandom, just to discover other stuff. And I kind of understand that, yeah, it's not... Yeah, you can enjoy multiple shows, but I feel I'm just gonna wait a bit. If I go and I just for example, discover a bit more Steven Universe, maybe discovering it at another time when I'm gonna be able to have the time to chill a bit about it, because I've seen a few episodes. It's a very good show, but it's a show I'm gonna have to take a lot of time with the see. Oh, the map. Basically, with what I want is just one 3D model to reference whenever I have one of these scenes with a very, very distant background, like some mountains and some well, basically I want something with a distance that is gonna stay consistent. Oh, more animations like Dinky's Destiny. Oh, it's gonna be a bit of a problem because the format itself was not bad, just that it's not the best format for me to tell stories. I realized that it's not a bad idea to tell one very complex story in multiple parts, but for the moment I don't have the skill set to pull one complex story like that again. And yeah, for the moment I'm just gonna test the way just the way that Luna's determination works for telling stories, because I think a very short story with a lot of depth is gonna be a lot better than a long story that is deep as a pool. And yeah, I know. But I'm not saying no. I'm really just trying to be very careful with it because I realize with time that it's a very, very, very difficult thing to handle. I have Luna's Determination, on which I'm currently working on. I have my screen freezing. Okay, it's here. I have my Sunset Shimmer project. My graphics card crashed, I think. Okay, so... Oh. Okay, okay, it crashed on me. My graphics card crashed. I hope it actually made a backup because I don't want to be losing all of that for a damn crash. Let's files. Okay, file. I hope. Oh yes, backup, back. Accept. Discard and open. All right. Please. Oh no no no. Seriously? I know. It's just that. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna have to do a lot again. Okay. Alright. Let's try to avoid repeating the same mistake as last time. so let's be calm and not break everything in my hands, because I'd have I'd have even less stuff on me. So wait, never mind. Don't do that. All right. So points. All right. Yeah, I know they call it edge verticals and faces, but I also always say point, line, face. And yes, there we go. Yeah, I have to do that part yet again, all because I didn't save at the right moment. Wait, those are never mind. Okay, I think I should explain a bit what I'm doing. Okay, so basically, what's going on is that the terrain is just one plane with a lot of polygons, and those polygons are pretty much just shaping the shape. So what I'm doing right now is just sculpting with that tool the way the rivers flow with the and basically the way those flow, well, it's defined by that map that I'm using, and the reason why I'm using that map is just, well, because it's just very accurate, and I don't really aim for the biggest accuracy ever, but I think that there's a reason why that map was made. If they So I'm just using that tool just to sculpt the... Oh, Control Z. Thanks for reminding me, Key. I'm really feeling stupid about this. I'm kinda glad that I'm not in a hurry right now, because if I was, I'd probably go throw myself down the stairs. And kinda, I don't rewatch my old projects because I'm scared of cringing a bit. But, yeah. And yeah, I don't like my own project, not really because I feel they're bad, it's just that I see the bad stuff very, very much compared to... I'm gonna pick the flaws a lot more, and well, since I learned about filmmaking, I'm gonna look back at old projects, and it's obvious that there's gonna be good stuff in it that I'm gonna look back and saying, yes, I did that, and I'm feeling proud of it. But there's also all the bad stuff, and I just can't look back. And yeah, some projects work really well with that, but some just... Yeah, let's see. And yeah, I get to learn a lot through it. Like, I get to learn how to... I get to learn how to do projects that I want to make. Because the thing is that when you make a project, there's a lot of stuff you just think that are just random and just stuff, well, just stuff that don't matter, and you don't care about these things that much until it's too late, until you realize that they were there for a reason. Like, you don't realize how important the framing, the scene can be. You don't realize the importance of just the choice of camera lens, just the choice of lighting, just all those things that you don't really realize. And it makes you just appreciate a lot more cinema. Let's see. Oh wait, I was about to do a huge mistake. Align world. There we go. And there we go. And go. Actually, I was looking at a demo reel of a studio. In Bollywood movies, they happen to have some Bollywood movies with special effects. And, well, I don't really watch them. My mom does, and I was just looking at all the special effects that they did with low budget. And I was quite impressed by a tiny studio that did those special effects for movies I've never seen. I just look, and some of them are very simple. Some background replacement. And yeah, well, you might remember that one time we watched The Room together. But I was not the only one who pointed out the mistakes. I was just the one who pointed out the lighting. Because in The Room there's one of the scenes where the main character basically just gets in the gets at home, and there's that spot of light that just shine on him through the window, but from an angle that makes it impossible, because all the other lights in the scene they just don't fit. It's clearly one of those and yeah, I'm gonna point out the flaws in some movies, but there's some great stuff in movies that I should point out sometimes. Obviously, there's bad stuff as well, but movies have no, not Room, The Room. It's the same name. It's almost the same name, but it's definitely not the same thing at all. It's a story about a guy in San Francisco who lives a life, and his girlfriend cheats on him, and he dies at the end. Oh, spoilers. Hey, Xan. And Derpy. And yeah. All right. Oh, wait. Oh, let's see. Wait, I guess I can go turn those. I think I made a mistake. That part is supposed to be a lot lower, but I missed the scale. And go. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it looks like DJ Derpy color. Well, the hairstyle itself was not meant to be, well, to be like that at first. It was mostly just supposed to be kind of like Derpy. But well, something with more the. Well, my first prototype in Pony Creator was like vinyl, but with a short tail. And I was fine with that, it was nice. But the first that I did with the that I did with my own tools instead of Pony Creator was a lot more like the Oh, I think at one point in the stream I'm gonna show you what my OC originally looked like. You might cringe, or laugh, or like her, I don't know. Go. There we go, render view, and render. Hell. Let's saved. Actually, let's see if I can grid there. Oh, okay. So intro, no diffuse, reflect, density. Okay, so I go here and plug it here, and oh, nice. My favorite emoji. I don't know. I don't. I like the that face. Go. Yeah, the one I posted in the chat. The I like that face because it's okay. So divide, save, good. All right. You. It still looks fake. Yeah, I think it's gonna look better once I figure everything in. No. No. Oh, yeah, I saved. At one point I should get some kind of thing that shows what keystrokes I actually do on my keyboard, so people actually don't wonder all the time what I'm doing. But yeah, I saved. Don't worry about it. I kind of learned my lesson, if there was one to learn. Okay, so I go like this. Okay, so Ponyville. Oh, my playlist is done. Just realized there was no music for a while. Gonna go awkward as hell. My graphics card kind of crashed, I think. Yeah, My screen doesn't update at all. And it's gonna crash on my... There we go, it crashed. Thing I saved. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but my graphics card crashed. So... Yep. There we go. Saved, render, view, surrender. Oh, roughness, material split. so. Yeah, I got to learn English a lot from watching TV. Because my school kind of teach English, but yeah, they it's not that they did a bad job, it's just that they didn't show a lot. There was a lot of stuff that I wish they had covered, like I don't know how to speak English enough to not get in trouble when you get the when you go to the United States. That's one of the reasons why I'm glad I went with the simplified technique. Yes. Alright, so I think at one point I'm gonna try to get webcam for these streams. See a bit. I'm trying to get these things done because it's, I don't know. It's probably just me, but I think. Now, I think I might do at one point some streams with less commentary, just doing stuff, because I like to do stuff in front of people. I don't know, just feel like I'm doing that for a reason. Oh wait, what stuff I'm doing for a reason? I'm not doing this part. So thanks, guys. Oh, I don't know any Russian at all. So, God damn it. looked good from far, but stuff. Oh, I see what I did wrong. All right. Yeah, I know. I'm kind of boring as a person, just trying to do my job and kinda like, yeah, I'm not an entertainer, kind of. Yes. Okay, I'm getting... Okay, I'm really having some really weird... really weird technical issues right now. I mean, it's going, but it's not going as well as I thought, so... But yeah, currently working on this. I'm really glad of what it's finally becoming. A lot of it is gonna be done thanks to some texture work, because I'm gonna have to render some... I'm gonna have to model this and to go in Mary, the texture software that I have, to do some very high resolution textures just to get this. And let's... yeah. Actually, I'm wondering how it's gonna look from ending. Let's see. I think I can create a camera. No cam one. Right. All right. So let me change camera to effective. The Star Swirl look. Oh, yeah. That thing with Wime Time. I guess I can talk a bit about it. Basically, Wime Time at one point wanted me to do what's his name again? You wanted me to do the Robbie Rotten for the no, that bad animation was done by Crown Prince, actually. No, I just did the face that you see when you during the song. It's really small. It's like yeah, it's a few pixels tall, but it's his face that you see, and he really wanted it, so I did. I did a face for him, and he was really happy with it. And yeah. Let's see. Oh, scene view. Interview. Like this. Oh, I actually have a few photos of me on my Tumblr. And yeah, I did oh my god, this is how it would look like if it was covered in snow. Skylight. point. It looks like snow all over it. It's not bad, but it's really stupid. Yeah, but yeah, let's save. Actually, I guess I could show you a bit. What I wanted to do actually tonight was I wanted to work on this shot right here with Luna looking back at the bell.